Springfield's Talk 104.1. Welcome to the show on this Tuesday. Weather's not going to be too bad, warming up a bit. Tomorrow at this time, we will be broadcasting live from St. George's Donuts, Battlefield and National. It is our first fundraising day for Heroes Breakfast. This is something that many of you are familiar with, where we team up with a number of our partners about once a month and do free breakfast for veterans. And in the decade plus we've been doing it, it's become ever so popular. It's outgrown the funding that we get from our incredibly generous sponsors. And given that over time, many of you have asked, how can we help? We decided that we would kick that into play. And so tomorrow we will be broadcasting live at the St. George's Donuts Battlefield National location, and they're going to provide 100% fully donated donuts that'll be made fresh that morning, and we ask that you come by and get yourself a donut, make a donation that will go towards the Future Heroes Breakfast, of which there is one Friday. So that will be happening this week. And it's pretty much as simple as that. You can make as small or as large of a donation as you would like to. We will have the Warrior's Journey, one of our partners, on hand, and they are going to be set up to take electronic payments. So if you don't have cash, that's fine. And then tomorrow throughout the morning, we will also give those of you who want to make a donation but are unable to come by physically, that you can still make a donation online as well. And like I said, that's something that we will be talking about tomorrow. So thank you to all our partners and those of you that are going to come out so that we can make sure we continue to do the Heroes Breakfast without having to put a cap on it. That's kind of the situation that, due to the popularity, we've been grappling with, and that is, I mean, at some point you say, well, all right, if we just don't have the funding to fully cover it because of its popularity, do we put a cap on it? Do we say after 150 veterans, 151 passed, you don't get breakfast this morning? And we don't want to do that. So this is what we're doing, calling for your help, and a huge thank you to St. George's Donuts, 100% fully donating any and all of the donuts that you all are going to be getting on or during the show tomorrow for donations, and 100% of the proceeds will go to buy those breakfasts. If you need any further details, we've got them at KSGF.com. Yesterday was a day in which Democrats demonstrated they really do prefer losing over winning, which the November election, I suppose, in that capacity works out well for them. Listening to what should have been universally and what normal people saw as a tremendous success regarding Colombia, the president refusing to accept those prisoners, and then Trump apparently on the golf course receiving word and like, all right, we'll put this statement out. We're going to do 25% tariffs. After a week, it'll be 50. Here are the other things we're going to do. And immediately the president's like, sorry, uncle, whatever you want, just let me know. Now, that's fantastic, right? I mean, these are criminals, many of them violent criminals, that are in our country, that as taxpayers we're paying for. And we go from the president of a country saying, no, we don't want them, to, okay, what can we do to accommodate? That is a win. That's a win. Man, though, if you listen to some of these Democrat lawmakers and commentators, they say that's actually a sign of weakness, that we're bullying our allies. I don't know about you. I suppose it's just the definition of bullying. We're a country, and you and I as citizens are a people that for years have been told we have to bear the brunt of all of this. If we don't, we're racist. We have to deal with the millions upon millions upon millions of people that just want to come here just because they do. We're the ones who are told that in some instances, our kids, particularly in some of the inner cities, can't go to school because the schools are being used to house illegals. We are the ones who have been told, and this particular, I believe New York is where this occurred, that veterans had to be kicked out of their facility in order to accommodate people who are in this country illegally. We are the ones who are told we have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars. We have to sacrifice our family members, oftentimes to rape and murder. We have to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of our citizens to the illegal drug trade. Because if we don't, we're racist. This is what we've been told. But we're the bullies because we elect a new president that says, hey, we're just going to enforce our laws. That's it. We're not going to create these new laws or anything. I mean, we've got borders. In fact, anywhere in the world you want, if you're confused about this, you can buy a map and you can look at the United States and you can see exactly where that border is. This isn't some made-up concept by President Trump. This isn't some made-up concept by white supremacists. We have a border. It's a very distinct line. In fact, all other countries do. The difference between the way we have operated versus all other countries is they demand people respect their borders. But we're told by the world and an entire political party and media apparatus in this country that if we don't just open our borders to anyone who wants to come here, including human traffickers, we're racist. And then when collectively as a nation we say, no, we're done with that. We want everyone to be held to the same standard we are as Americans, and that is you have to follow the law. We're bullies? We're bullies for that? For a political ideology that loves to wave the banner of equality, the majority of Americans just want to be treated equally when it comes to this particular issue. As individuals, I'm expected to follow the law. If I have kids and I violate the law and I commit some crime and I'm being handcuffed to take off to jail, I don't get a free pass because you're separating me from my children. That's not how it works. If I want to drive my vehicle around town but decide I don't want to go through the process of taking the test, paying the government the money, going to the government facility in order to get papers showing that I'm legally able to drive, I don't get a free pass on that. I don't get labeled a dreamer and get told, don't worry, you don't have to go through the same process that all these other people did. I don't get that. You don't get that. We just want to be treated equally. And as a country as well. Why is it the United States is expected to be treated and to accept the unequal treatment when it comes to the sovereignty of our border compared to every other country in the world? Every other country gets to enforce their border. Every other country gets to, oftentimes without even any sort of trial or explanation, you're caught in the country illegally, they just throw you straight in jail. We just want to be on an even playing field here. We just want to be in the same rule book as everyone else. We just want to be treated equally. I thought that's what people on the left wanted. But yesterday, we watched, instead of an acknowledgement, I mean, you want a demonstration that it does not matter what Trump does. And this is why you cannot trust the media. It doesn't make a bit of difference what he does. They never, ever, 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 ever will go, well, I guess he was right on this one. Never. And here we were able to get a country that was willfully doing us harm by facilitating the transfer of some of their worst criminals into the United States. And with one message put out there, Trump gets the president to reverse course. That seems pretty cool. One message. Oh, no. Oh, it's so unbecoming. See, we're supposed to fail with dignity, not succeed. They're complaining. The same media who, transparency is the key of the day. Transparency is so important. So Trump, that's pretty transparent. Trump, hey, here's the message to Colombia, just so everyone understands. There's no one in the dark on this. This is not behind closed doors. We're not secretly doing anything at all. Here it is, full. So everyone gets to see. American citizens get to see. The people of Colombia get to see. The world gets to see. All of a sudden, transparency isn't such a good thing if you listen to the left. That's horrible. Oh, how embarrassing. Oh, okay. It is a human condition oftentimes. There are people who are not happy unless they're unhappy. And you may know people like this in real life. They have to be miserable. And they seek it out. They will get online just to find out what Trump has done. And so they can find out how it is that they can be miserable today about it. They can't help themselves. If they don't do it, and it's the way the brain works, if you participate in certain habits, particularly of emotional nature, over and over again, your brain rewires to where that's the default, and you almost need it. You crave it. It's science. Works the other way as well. If you choose to find the positive, you take those overt, and you do that day after day, after a period of time, it becomes your default. You just, with instinct, without even thinking about it, see the positive in things. And you can just watch the left and the misery, while the rest of America is saying, thank goodness. We have somebody in charge who's actually... What was the word that the former Democratic fundraiser, this is what competency looks like. Yeah. I mean, it's competency plus a bag of chips. Springfield's Talk 104.1. We've got weather here in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 58. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 34. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 57. And on Thursday, rain throughout the day, high near 54.
Tomorrow morning, doing the show live, St. George's Donuts, Battlefield National. Please come by, get yourself a donut, make a donation to help pay for future Heroes Breakfast. There will be a Heroes Breakfast at Scramblers Friday. Huge thank you to our partners, of course, in that with Scramblers, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, and the Warrior's Journey. Pineapple Life Coach and Bradford Light, both brews from Kansas Territory Brewing Company. Just in 2024, last season, they were at Hammond's Field, and then just at the end of the year, they were able to get into a number of actual stores so that those of you who enjoyed drinking at Hammond's Field, or maybe you didn't go to any of the Springfield Cardinal games, and so you hadn't had a chance to have it, gave you an opportunity, and now Macadoodle's Price Cutters, whether it's the Bradford Light or the Pineapple Life Coach, you can get those brought to you by the good people at Show Me Beverage. One of the biggest complaints that the left and a number of other other people had was that the criminals that were being flown back to Colombia were handcuffed, like criminals. They pitched a fit over this. In fact, this is back up here a bit. What hasn't really been covered so much in the news is that the Colombian government, prior to the president of Colombia saying we're not going to accept those flights, said we will accept those flights. If you don't know any better, you would think that Trump just told our government, hey, let's surprise them. Just, hey, should we give them a heads up? We're coming. No. Let's just load some planes with some of their citizens that are criminals, and then just surprise. That's not what happened. The agreement was already made. This had been agreed to. At the last minute, the president of Colombia just said, no, I don't think so. Now, he claimed subsequent to all of this blowing up that it was because he learned that the prisoners were handcuffed. They use the word shackled because, it makes it sound scarier. I don't know why the president of Colombia decided all of the sudden to reverse course and try and cancel out the agreement that their government had already made with ours to accept their citizens back into their country. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe some political pressure on the left. Frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if there weren't elected Democrats, that were picking up the phone, getting a hold of the president and saying, hey, listen, if you turn this flight back, we'll support you on this. This would not surprise me. But we don't ultimately know the reason. What we do know is this was agreed to ahead of time. And the president then at the last minute of Colombia said, no, I don't think so. And the reason that he would give whenever there was blowback, and Trump said what he said about the tariffs and these other things, and then the president of Colombia is like, oh, okay, sure, no problem. And he's like, well, because the conditions in which they were being flown and they were handcuffed. These are criminals. I mean, have you ever been on a flight? And most of you haven't. But whenever there is a commercial flight and there is some sort of inmate or prisoner that is being flown, even when they have a couple of marshals accompanying them, they're still handcuffed. Can you imagine a big cargo plane with a couple of pilots and then some other personnel, and then having, I don't even know how many 100 plus, how many criminals they are able to accommodate in something like this, just kind of able to just get up and walk around? Do you know how stupid you would have to be to do that? I think Trump even yesterday, he was giving a speech to GOP congressional members down in Florida, and he referenced the movie Con Air. Have you seen that movie before? And in that movie, they were chained up, but they had this plan to, get themselves unshackled and take over the plane and all this sort of stuff. It's actually not a bad, fun movie to watch. Nicolas Cage, John Malkovich, there's a couple of other people in it. But because we don't want to be, some of these people are violent criminals, rapists, child molesters. The common sense folks who are pushing back on this are characterizing the left and the Democrats because they wanted them to get first-class service. And I understand the point they're trying to make, but you don't even really have to make that point. Just every time you see a bus transport, think about it in that capacity. You see these bus transports. You've seen it portrayed in movies where they're taking people, whether it's from the courthouse to the jail to a prison, and they get all the prisoners on there. They're all shackled up. Do you know why? Because it's not a good idea to have a whole grouping of people together, which outnumber the good guys, unrestrained, when they're facing prison time and they're headed to a place in which they don't want to go. Not a good idea. Particularly when many of those people have demonstrated they're willing to do physical harm to other people just to get what they want. It is the craziest thing. There's a story, Daily Wire, the Brazilian government, led by its socialist president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, is demanding answers after 88 of its citizens were deported from the United States in handcuffs on Friday. What answer do you need? I'm sorry, do you not use handcuffs in Brazil when dealing with violent criminals? How do you guys do it? This is a good opportunity for two sides that do things very differently when it comes to dealing with criminals. Apparently, one way that Brazil deals with their criminals is to export them to the United States. We know that that happens. But outside of that, whenever somebody in Brazil is placed under arrest, do you just say, hey, you mind holding your own hand? If handcuffs are not used, if restraints are not used, I'm just very curious what kinder, gentler way they have of making sure that violent criminals do not go on the attack in order to escape their incarceration. I can't believe this article in particular notes handcuffing illegal immigrants on deportation flights has been standard practice by the U.S. government, including under the Biden administration. Well, now those are details we don't need to talk about, of course. In order to ensure the safety for pilots and agents on the flights, the fact that this has to be explained, the only thing that has been, to some degree, more entertaining than watching how quickly the president of Colombia, responded to Trump's demands, while Trump didn't even get off the golf course in order to make it happen, is the way that the left has bent over backwards, talking about how wrong the United States is because we won that little back and forth battle. And I think it is important to remember the original point that this wasn't some battle over us really screwing over Colombia for their natural resources. This was simply about them taking back their own citizens that are violent criminals that are not supposed to be in our country anyway. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Couple of your text messages coming up here in just a couple of moments. We do want to take a short break, continuing on here. After the latest traffic.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high around 58. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 34. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 57. And on Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 54.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. I was thinking the other day about filling up empty seats on planes, returning illegal aliens with our worst criminals. Hey, that wouldn't be actually a bad idea. Though I think that there are enough illegal criminals right now to where there's not going to be a lot of standby. Not going to be a lot of empty seats. But how about this? This is an idea. It wouldn't even have to be retroactive. Every criminal that is caught, maybe it would be just they're caught for the first time after an executive order gets signed. So an executive order gets signed called two for one. And I was thinking of variations of names I probably shouldn't say. But it's 2 for 1. And any illegal who is caught, and we can even say commits a crime in addition to being here illegally, beats up his girlfriend, molests a child. And if the first contact that we have with that this is the first time, we are not familiar with this person. If it's after that 2 for 1 executive order sign, not only do they get sent back to their country, but we send 2 of our most violent criminals with them. I remember Dinesh D'Souza when he came and spoke at the Vitae Foundation annual event in Springfield several years ago. He was talking about Donald Trump and talking about how a lot of people, when it came to, and I think Trump it was still his first term. He was running for re-election. And one of the biggest complaints against Trump is that, it's just the way that he taught. He's just so aggressive and so forth. And D'Souza's argument was, well, unfortunately, that's what it takes to win right now. Maybe not 20 years ago, but the way that Democrats operate today, it is what's necessary. And he relayed the story about how there was a period of time during the Civil War in which the Confederates, when they would capture a Union soldier, or and I think maybe specifically if it was a black Union soldier, they would execute them. And so Lincoln implemented a policy: every time they do that, then we kill two. We're going to take two of their prisoners that we have and just execute them, in order to send the message: this is going to hurt you more than us. Make it so it wasn't worth their while. And he explained that, as horrific as that may sound, at that moment in time, that's what was necessary. 2 for 1. And so maybe that approach, or maybe 10 for 1. I don't know. We've got a problem with our prisons being overpopulated anyhow. Why not send them there? They send their criminals here. You mention, or the idea gets mentioned, and it sounds so absurd, and you can only imagine the way that the left would behave. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Look how angry they get just at the reality of us sending criminals back to the countries from which they came, that they belong. Can you imagine if we're like, oh, yeah, and the plane's also going to be populated with some of our worst criminals. You can have them now. They go nuts. But that's why should we do it? I mean, this is what Brazil, Colombia, El Salvador, Mexico, this is what all these other countries do. In Colombia, there are a number of elected officials that are demanding the impeachment of the socialist president because of the embarrassing debacle. Colombian Senator Maria Fernanda Cabal called for Petro's impeachment yesterday, accusing Petro of not wanting to seek solution but rather consolidate his ideological narrative. Cabal asserted that having the United States as an enemy is not a mistake, but is instead, quote, part of the manual of 21st century socialism that Petro follows to the letter. The message read, with this enemy created by Petro, attention is distracted from the seriousness of Catatumba and the territorial control strategy of the ELN, Cartel of the Suns, and the Bacata Pact. Its strategy is clear: blame an external enemy to justify its internal failures, use isolation as a tool of control and advance its anti-imperialist agenda. This government does not see the crisis as a problem, but as an opportunity to centralize power and subject the country to a model of state dependency. So it's pretty interesting, because what you've got some elected officials in Colombia saying is that the socialist president is essentially doing what Democrats do in this country, and that is, whenever they create a problem, blame somebody else, blame the victim, distract with something over here. Like, for example, the inflation that was caused by Democrat policies, blame the small business owners, claim that they are simply trying to jack up prices and take advantage of you so that they can evade responsibility. And that's what, in Colombia, some of these elected officials down there are saying, is that he should be impeached because this is just done to distract from the failures of his socialist policies, trying to say, oh, look, you need me. I'm the guy that's going to stand up for you against the evil United States of America and that mean Donald Trump guy. Ocasio-Cortez. And so I swear, immediately, some people on the left, when they first heard about this, got online and Googled, why is Colombia beneficial to the United States? What does Colombia export to the United States? They immediately went and did this, because all of a sudden, They're out there posting, the price of coffee's going to go up. The price of one of the idiots on The View, oh, don't you know that flowers come from Colombia with Valentine's Day around the corner? Flowers are going to cost more. Now, of course, there's an argument that even if the tariffs did go into place, some people would be willing to pay an extra nickel for a cup of coffee if that meant getting rapists and murderers and child molesters out of the country who don't belong here. Apparently, to the left, that isn't a good trade-off. But you listen to some of these people like Ocasio-Cortez with the coffee. Like, Colombia is the only country we get coffee from. Quote, to punish Colombia, Trump is about to make every American pay even more for coffee. Remember, we pay the tariffs, not Colombia. Trump is all about making inflation worse for working class Americans, not better. He's lining the pockets of himself and the billionaire class. Well, now, there are a number of things here, of course, that don't make sense. And I know, arguably, it's silly to try to make sense from declarations made from somebody like Ocasio-Cortez. But how would imposing tariffs on Colombia be Trump lining his own pockets? What? I think for Christmas, these congressional Democrats were given Mad Libs and told, hey, don't think about it too much. After all, our base doesn't need a lot to go off of. So just anytime you're mad at Trump, randomly pick a page, fill in some words, and then go ahead and just put that out as an official statement. Because that's what we heard a lot of yesterday. Meanwhile, the normal American is looking at yesterday as yet another winning day for the country. It's pretty telling that any time there is a win for the United States of America and for the American people, the left is unhappy. It almost starts to make sense that when they're in charge, things don't go well for us. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line. Tariffs are apparently the only tax Democrats don't like. Well, they were fine with them when Biden kept Trump's previous tariffs in place. Tariffs are like anything else. Whether it is an issue, a person, or a category of people, they don't really care about them outside of can they use it to attack political enemies. That's the only value anybody or any issue has to the left. Tariffs are a fantastic example of this. I've been talking about this issue for a very long time, and when Trump, we had this tariff discussion when Trump was president the first time around, and he talked about tariffs, and you had people, oh my gosh, it's going to cause inflation, and I'm not saying that there aren't times or issues in which, in particular instances with particular industries, in which tariffs can add to the increased cost, which, by the way, it's not really inflation. I mean, inflation is when you end up with devaluing the dollar. That's different than the cost of something going up. But semantics. And whenever you had the media and the Democrats going overboard to explain that, well, when the tariff gets applied to the business just passes it along to the consumer. Well, that's not always true. Sometimes it is. But sometimes, and this is the ultimate goal of, Trump, either they changed their ways and they began to accommodate more fair trade practices, or they find, gosh, now it's cheaper for us to actually move our facility to the United States, and then they're just paying taxes, corporate taxes here, and so we get even more revenue that way. That's one of the other avenues that oftentimes is taken in order to try and evade the tariff issue by companies that are overseas. So it doesn't always result in an increased cost, but there is a reality to that. The concept that anytime there is an additional cost to the company has to change the way it does things if it wants to, offset that. And 6 years ago, when we were having this discussion and the media was going to great lengths in order to explain that concept, I noted that they never explain that concept when it comes to corporate taxes. Just remember, the same people who run around like Ocasio-Cortez and say, remember, you're the one who paid tariffs, kick that concept out the door when it comes to corporate taxes. The difference between a tariff and a tax on a corporation that's here in the United States is that when you have a company overseas and you implement tariffs, there's a chance that they are going to move their business here to the United States in order to not have to pay those tariffs, thus then creating jobs for people here in the country and paying corporate taxes. So, the Treasury gets dollars that way. But if you're a corporation and you have somebody come along and say, oh, we're going to tax you at 38%, there's not much you can do about that, other than perhaps move out of the country to find a country that has lower corporate taxes. So it's just important to remember the same people who all of a sudden claim that they have these grave concerns about tariffs and the cost being passed on to the consumer go around bragging about forcing corporations to pay their fair share. So in their world, corporations don't pass on corporate taxes, just tariffs. And the reason they're able to get away with this is because the media is lockstep with them in that disinformation campaign. A leftist TikToker user is threatening to key cars bearing Trump bumper stickers that she spots parked outside Mexican restaurants because that's a reasonable way to deal with people with whom you disagree. The woman appeared to be upset over President Trump's mass deportation efforts targeting criminal illegal aliens all over the country, MRC TV reported on Monday. The woman wearing glasses said in the clip, quote, "If I pull up to a Mexican restaurant and I see a truck, because let's face it, it's going to be a trunk with a Trump bumper sticker, you're getting keyed." She then threatened further, "I don't even want to see you at Taco Bell. The only thing you can eat for the rest of your life is plain white bread and mayonnaise, and I know you were going to eat a lot of that anyway, but that's all you deserve. You deserve nothing that tastes good for the rest of your life." This is another very well thought out, articulated argument against mass deportation. One of the things I love about this is it just demonstrates how the left view Hispanics. Anytime the left is talking about the impact deportations will have on our country, they always talk about people taking out our trash, people cleaning our toilets, people, picking our vegetables, or in this case, this left-wing activist on TikTok, Taco Bell. I mean, even Jill Biden compared Hispanics to breakfast tacos. The reason they do this, it's a genuine reason. And by genuine, I mean, it's, they come across it's because in their lives, that is their experience with Hispanics. For average people, that's not the average interaction with Hispanic individuals. You and I, we have these normal circles, and, whether it's work or church. But the really, really uber wealthy left, particularly those in Hollywood, they live in a bubble. They're not going to these places that have a real mixture of cultures like churches oftentimes do, and their workplace. It's pretty isolated from average people other than the help. The people that they hire to scrub their toilets, the people that they hire to take out their trash. And so in their minds, that is the offering that Hispanics give us in this country. Not realizing that Hispanics in this country are pretty much the same as everybody else, and that they contribute in a whole spectrum of ways, but they pigeonhole them based off of their experience. And that's why every time they make an argue about the negative impact this is going to have on our country, it's almost always in that context. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. There's a great text coming in. For the left, the illegals are the replacement slaves after Lincoln took away their original slaves. One of this primary argument, to the point I was making earlier about, of course, for the left, it's all stereotype because the experience that they have, particularly the very very uber wealthy left, in their minds, Hispanics, all they do is clean toilets and do these jobs that Americans won't do. That is the same argument that Democrats use from an economic perspective for keeping slavery legal. Who's going to pick the cotton? Our industries down here will collapse because they do labor that it's much, much cheaper to buy slaves and to house slaves and to feed slaves than it is to pay people who demand a livable wage in order to do it. It's the exact same argument that they make today about allowing illegals to stay in this country. Well, all these different industries, it's so much cheaper just to have illegals here to do it. Who's going to do these jobs? These industries will collapse. The cost of products will go up. Word for word, line for line. The argument that Democrats use from an economic perspective about keeping illegals or allowing illegals to stay in this country are the exact same arguments they made to keep slavery legal. And I would suggest that if the arguments you use for a particular issue regarding a particular grouping of people is the exact same argument that has been used in order to justify slavery, may not be the best argument. Just a suggestion, something to mull over there. Coming up tomorrow, we are going to be broadcasting live for our 3-hour fundraiser, St. George's Donuts at Battlefield and National, along with our friends at Warriors Journey. Donuts, fresh donuts for donations to help supplement future Heroes Breakfast. And we will have a Heroes Breakfast this Friday, in fact, so we'd love to see it Scramblers for that. But this is an opportunity, in addition to the generous help from all of our Heroes Breakfast sponsors, to allow you to help us continue to fund these. And that, again, will be tomorrow from 6 8 to 9 8 at St. George's Donuts, Battlefield, and National. I'm guessing you probably didn't watch any of the speech Trump gave. It's a little over an hour long to the congressional Republicans in Florida yesterday.
No, I saw it was
Yeah, it
happening,
was
but I
like
did not tune it in.
it was about 4:30 to just a bit after 5:30. And I've compared Trump to Phil Hendry before, and I'm not going to reiterate who Phil Hendry is, but one of the brilliant things about what Trump does when he trolls the left is he knows that his supporters know it. He doesn't have to explain it. He just does. It's like we're all in on. It's a
Like an inside joke.
inside joke. Yeah, it's like an inside joke. And even whenever you talk about the fact it's an inside joke, the left still can't help themselves in still falling for it. And yesterday I knew as he made a crack about, some people are, I forget the exact verbiage, but say maybe I should get a third term. And Mike Johnson's there. He goes, I don't know. Is that something that can even happen? And I'm like, because you just know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you the stories today. Here's Daily Beast. Trump asked Mike Johnson if he'll allow president a third term. Where there's this other headline about, let's see. Am I allowed? Critics aren't laughing at Donald Trump's latest Looney Tunes quote joke. I mean, it's just so obvious. And then when you're like, okay, it's a joke, you're kind of being made fun of. They still, it really is derangement. It really truly is. It's like, no, he's messing with you guys. And they want, it's a weird condition because they want to believe the worst. They want to believe. They really truly they may say that I don't want Trump to be a dictator. They actually do, because whenever they will get themselves all worked up over something that they believe that he said that is dictatorial, and then they find out it's not true, their instinct isn't relief. It's disappointment. And then they go and look for something else that they can satisfy themselves to believe that he's really a crazed dictator. It's fun to watch. It's kind of sad, though, at the same time. Speaking of, this Selena Gomez video that she posted.
We did see that.
How uncomfortable. Now, let me just say this, and I know I'm a guy, and maybe I'm a little old school. I do not understand. Well, I believe that there is a massive psychological, I would call it condition, whether it's good or bad, in which people want other people to see them crying. That's not me. I think that there are few exceptions. Let's say if your child has disappeared, and people get very caught up in that. We saw that over the weekend. Fortunately, that young girl in the Rogersville area was found, located. But sometimes you'll see if an extended period goes by, they'll interview the parents, or the parents will post on social media knowing that it'll get out there, and they'll be talking about their daughter or their son that disappeared, and they will get choked up and sometimes cry. But there's a point to that. They're not on there in order to cry. They're on there with the hopes that the interview or the video is going to help bring their child home. And of course that can be a very traumatic thing. I get that. I understand that. But people who, it's like they want you to know how serious things are, because they are the great barometer of how serious the situation is. And it's this center of the universe syndrome where somebody's like, oh, I'm so sad, I'm crying about this. So that is an indicator to the rest of the world out there how serious this is. I am the great barometer of this. And Selena Gomez gets on social media to demonstrate how awful all of this is by everybody seeing her cry. She's like sobbing, and she says this is happening to her people. I don't know what she means by her people, billionaires. She's worth over $1 billion. She was born here in the States. Is she talking just about looks? She didn't clarify what she meant by my people. But she just goes on and about, I wish there was something I could do to help. There probably is. Especially if you have over $1 billion. How about you find some of these people and financially support their effort to use the legal pathway to citizenship. One of the greatest frustrations I have with this whole subject matter, and we heard it over the weekend, Democrats are like, well, these people just need to be provided a pathway to citizenship. There is a pathway to citizenship. Hundreds of thousands of people take it every year. Every state and virtually it may be every major city in this country, at least once a year, oftentimes more than that. I know Springfield every year, at least once, if not more, has a swearing-in ceremony of people who are born in other countries, who came to the United States and took the pathway to citizenship. There is already a pathway to I wish there would be pushback on this every time I hear this, well, there needs to be a pathway to citizenship for these people. There's never pushback. There is a pathway to citizenship. I mean, this is, I think it was when Trump was when he was running, or even when he was president the first time, we talked about how he needs to start showing up at these swearing-in ceremonies. Number one, how awesome would that be if you are sworn in as a new citizen legally, taking that pathway in this country, and the president of the United States shows up to do the swearing in? How awesome would that be? But I can guarantee you, there is a significant portion of the American population that has no idea that there is a pathway to citizenship and that people can come to this country legally and become legal U.S. citizens. Hundreds of thousands every year. It fluctuates, a couple 100,000, 600,000. If you have $1.8 billion and you are so torn up at the fact that these people are not able to be in this country legally, they are. And if you want to argue that financially they aren't able to accommodate what is required, then help them. By the way, I do also at the same time lose a little bit of sympathy for the argument that, well, they just don't have the money to do it when they pay $20,000 or $30,000 to coyotes to have their family shipped up here. If you can pay $30,000 to a human smuggler, then don't, I just don't want to hear this, well, they don't have the financial means. But for people on the left like Selena Gomez, and listen, I also recognize she probably believes the disinformation that has been put out there, that schools are being raided, and, that all of these innocent children they're going into daycares. And by the way, the instances in which they have gone to schools, it's because we know that there is an illegal that is working at that school that is like a child rapist that got a job as a custodian or something. So I suppose the left's perspective is, no, we should let that person prey on those kids instead of deporting him. I know it's a messed up moral compass, don't understand it. But for a billionaire like Selena Gomez, it's just much easier to cry on video than it actually is to do something meaningful, like set up scholarships, set up programs, set up an education campaign to educate all of these people about the pathway to citizenship. Have an ad campaign highlighting any number of the hundreds of thousands of people who did take the pathway to citizenship. Make those people superstars. But why do that when it's free? Well, to get on social media and just cry about how sad you are.
I looked up how much the application is for naturalization. $760.
Well, and we know that there are, there's the and we knew that there was a cost to it because we, Katie, who works here, she took that pathway to citizenship and became an official American citizen after taking the test. We helped her, quote, study for the test and with the application fees. And I know that there are oftentimes probably other fees that are associated with it. But it's, number one, do you know how many people in this country that are Americans have to struggle and scrimp and save and get a second mortgage on their house to pay fees to open a business? Do you know the additional fees that go to the cost of a new home just because of regulations and paperwork. So this isn't, once again, something in which we're just targeting people who are in this country illegally and saying, well, we're going to have rules and regulations for you, no one else. This is, unfortunately, in many ways, this is America today. It is filled with red tape. It is filled with paperwork. It is filled with fees, nickeling, diming us to death. That is part of America today. And just because you come here illegally doesn't mean that somehow you should be rewarded by not having to go what through the rest of us, go through. As a billionaire, how many applications that Selena Gomez could pay for to take the citizenship test? Like I said, it's much, much easier just to get all sorts of coverage about what a compassionate and caring person you are by crying on a video that you post on social media. I've seen what does Tom Homan have to say to Selena Gomez? Why would he have anything to say to her? What, see a counselor? I mean... What we're really legitimately asking the border czar, the person in charge of deportation and border security, what he thinks about a billionaire celebrity posting a picture of her crying on social media. Well, what do you say to her? Go to counseling. Fund scholarships to pay for these application fees. Educate those who are in this country illegally about how to come here legally. There's a lot of things I would say to her. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 58. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 34. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 57. And on Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 54.
People like Selena Gomez and these others that, they just wish there was something they could do. I don't know what I can do. You can actually, I got a texting, I have a bunch of texts going on all with family members
Yeah.
right now about completely unrelated things. But, my brother's wife is from El Salvador, and he had noted that they've sponsored numerous families from El Salvador so that they could become citizens the right way. But it really is typical of the left. They tell themselves, they just wish there was something they could do. But if it takes any effort, they don't. This is it's why people on the left look to government for the answer to everything, because then they can promote policies that allow them to tell themselves they're compassionate and care about people without actually having to do anything themselves. I mean, that's what it boils down to. That's exactly what it boils down to. And Selena Gomez being worth $1.3 billion, crying that she just wishes there was something she could do. There's just nothing, she just doesn't know what to do, is a perfect example of that. There's a lot of stuff you can do. But it takes effort. And sometimes you don't get the accolades for it. Sometimes people who help sponsor other people, for example, to come into this country legally or make a donation so that they can cover the fees, they don't get on the cover of a magazine for it. They don't get to walk the red carpet for it. But the left loves attention. This is why they always change their avatars, or they do this, or they do that, or they do, it's because then they get to show themselves off and look at what I'm doing and look at all the likes I got. Look at all the people that say, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so inspirational. Sometimes just really doing nothing other than helping people, you don't get that. It's not nearly as fun, and it takes a lot of effort. Now, moving on to something much more meaningful, PETA is calling for the end to Groundhog Day tradition and replacing Puxtatawny Phil with a vegan weather reveal cake. You couldn't think of something better than a vegan weather reveal cake?
I don't even know what that means.
I'm guessing, let's see if they, PETA, okay. They said groundhogs are shy prey animals who, when allowed, actively avoid humans. I'm trying to see if they explain what the cake is. I didn't see it. They did say that it would be delicious. Let's see here. Allow themselves to be groundhogs. I'm guessing that you would cut into the cake and then if it had something,
then if the
that
cake sees its shadow.
Right, yeah, maybe that's what it is. The cake sees its shadow. I can't hear a single Groundhog Day story or a story about Puxatawney Phil without thinking about Mayor de Blasio killing Puxatawney Phil, what was that, 10, 11 years ago? He dropped the thing, and then it suffered evidently from internal organ damage for months before it finally died. De Blasio. What a perfect symbolic illustration of his entire administration as mayor of New York. Something as simple as holding up a ground dog, and he fouled that up so bad it killed the groundhog. Vegan weather reveal cake. Well, here's the thing. Go ahead and do that. No one's stopping you. Make it catch on. Now, I understand that if they do a reveal with the vegan reveal cake, that doesn't necessarily mean that others will stop doing the Puxatawney Phil thing. But if that's the right thing to do, just do it. This is another instance, though. Instead of actually doing something meaningful, it's much easier just to demand that other people do it. Vegan reveal cake. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. All right, PETA calls to end Groundhog Day tradition, replace Puxtatawny Phil with a vegan weather reveal cake. I do think it's important to note that PETA is as, in a meaningful manner, valuable to animals as Black Lives Matter is to black people. It's just a scam organization that doesn't actually help animals in a meaningful way. In fact, does more harm than good. PETA has gotten in trouble on numerous occasions for just executing hordes of animals because they have this weird, twisted belief system that, well, it's better that they're dead than owned by humans, or whatever weird, twisted thing that they have in their heads. So it is a total, complete scam organization. But you said that, so the weather reveal cakes, if it's blue, it's winter.
Yeah.
So she's telling me, she's like, well, they say if it's blue, it's winter. So or it's 5 more, six more weeks, 6 more weeks winter. And so my thought is, well, I guess, okay, blue because it's cold. And so, but no, then if it's pink, that means
early spring.
So they just stole the gender reveal colors. They couldn't even come up with their own colors.
Well,
Like, you would think yellow for sunshine,
right,
or
green for the green grass.
Green grass, things beginning to sprout out. PETA is so uncreative and so lazy that they stole the idea of a gender reveal cake, and they didn't even change the colors in order to match their particular theme. PETA. What an idiotic organization. The only thing worthwhile PETA has ever done is, in some ad campaigns, convinced hot chicks to pose topless. That is about it. Outside of that, no value to society whatsoever. Springfield's Talk 1041, Pyramid Roofing Company, 417-447-KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 58. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 34. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 57. And on Thursday, we'll see rain throughout the day with a high near 54.
I don't want to go back and spend time on the immigration issue, but this story did just pop up, and I thought, this is just so perfect. And I just love this. This is great. Kristi Noem, what was it, Saturday? Saturday she was confirmed as Homeland Security Secretary. Yesterday, or maybe it was early this morning, she joined an immigration enforcement raid in New York City. Like, they're on the ground with them as the raid was carried out. These are people that get in the mix of it.
You know who else was part of one of those raids?
Oh, Dr. Phil?
Dr. Phil, yeah.
Which I haven't looked deeply into it, but why was it part of his show?
I don't know.
Because doesn't he still have a show? I think it's online. Maybe it was for the show. Well, I saw one exchange where the guy knew who he was because he said, "My mom watches your show" or something. I think it was a child rapist or something. Oh, and he was handcuffed. Oh, no. They handcuffed the guy. Yeah, Dr. Phil is going on these raids. But here, Kristi Noem just the difference between these people that are getting sworn in the Trump administration who have these particular positions of significance and importance versus the Biden years. I mean, Kamala Harris, who is the border czar, wouldn't even go to the border. Then, of course, tried to claim she wasn't the border czar. Pete Buttigieg, he didn't even show up the first, 2 months of his job because he and his husband had, quote, had a baby. Meanwhile, Kristi Noem is Homeland Security here. She's, 2 days on the job, and she's in the mix of actual raids taking place. There really are two very different types of people, and we're watching the difference in results play out. There are people who just think that they are important and, by the very virtue of their existence, should have important positions. I think Gavin Newsom is one of those people. Karen Bass of Los Angeles is one of those people. Pete Buttigieg was one of those people. A lot of Democrats, frankly. To them, and this is why merit is irrelevant to them. There's this big divide, whether or not people who get jobs or jobs should be filled by people who are going to best carry out those jobs versus the left that they say meritocracy is racist and it's irrelevant. Well, that is, to them it is, because they know even they themselves oftentimes aren't the best person for the job. That's not what it's about for them. So they get into these positions and they just enjoy the trappings of it all. They enjoy the travel of it all. They enjoy the hobnobbing of it all. They enjoy the fame of it all versus people like Homan, who day one on the job, Kristi Noem, they're in the midst of these immigration raids on the ground. These people, Trump himself, just work, and work hard and work smart. What a tremendous difference. Now let's talk about another disinformation campaign that is currently being run out there, and it has to do with Trump, quote, targeting, or even better yet, banning transgenders from the military. All right, well, just out of the gate, no, he didn't. There's no executive order banning transgenders from the military. What an executive order does do is say that if you are transgender in the military, taxpayers are not going to pay for your sex change operations. Taxpayers you're not going to join the military only to then say, I need hormone therapy. That's not what the military is for. You want to do that on your own or join some other organization that is going to pay for that for you? Godspeed. Good luck to you. Knock yourself out. Do whatever it is you want to do. But that's not what the military exists for, not in the United States. No judgment. You do you, but this is the military. We have different priorities. If it makes sense for transgenders to get cosmetic surgery, then why shouldn't everyone else be able to get cosmetic surgery? You get, somebody that wants butt cheek implants or breast implants or, I'm getting up there in age. I want that promotion, but I'm afraid if I look too old, people will think I'm so I need to, get a little bit of Botox. Should we pay for those things? Of course not. No, we should not. It also says if you are a man When it comes to housing, when it comes to barracks, you are going to be housed with other men, not with women simply because you decide that you are a woman. And while, of course, there are going to be conditions in which separating genders from one another is something that is not conducive to that particular condition, when those conditions do exist, boys are going to be with boys and girls are going to be with girls. It is not banning transgenders. It doesn't ban transgenders any more than, and this drives me nuts, the disinformation. Anytime there is any sort of legislation, we've dealt with it here in Missouri, in which legislation is written up that says boys compete against boys and girls compete against girls. And the headlines are always, Republicans pushing legislation to ban transgenders from sports. No. No such thing. In fact, I'm not aware anywhere in this country where there has ever been any legislation or suggestion of legislation that would ban transgenders from participating in anything. There is legislation that says transgenders are to be treated just like everybody else equally. If you're a guy, you're not allowed to go into the girls' locker room just because you declare that you're a girl. You're going to be treated just like guys who are cisgender, as they say. And that is a guy who recognizes that, yes, he is actually a guy. You're going to be treated just like everyone else. That's called equality. The Federalist piece has a pretty quick piece on this. No one's being banned from military. Radical trans perks are. For any self-identifying transgender people with hopes of serving in our military, there's good news. You still can. Just maybe don't show up to the recruiter announcing that you have a penis and expect to be sleeping in the women's barracks. President Trump is reportedly set to sign an executive order that will prohibit taxpayer-funded accommodations for trans-identifying people in the military. That includes hormone replacement drugs, cosmetic genital surgery, cosmetic breast removal, and mixed-sex housing. Just as when Trump did this in his first term, the media are attempting to frame the event as a cruel setback for civil rights. During an interview segment on Monday, a CNN screen graphic described the coming order as banning transgender service members. Again, disinformation. According to the New York Post, the White House document previewing the order offers the administration's reasoning for the directive. Quote, it takes a minimum can take a minimum of 12 months for an individual to complete treatments after transition surgery, which often involves the use of heavy narcotics. During this period, they're not physically capable of meeting military readiness requirements and require ongoing medical care. This is not conducive for deployment or other readiness requirements. In other words, now that there are people in charge of the military whose number one priority is making sure the military is prepared to take on aggressors or invaders, that's going to be the number one priority. Whatever makes us get closer to that goal. Everything else is a distraction, so it's not needed. It is a distraction of resources. It's a distraction of efforts. And incidentally, and what a lot of people don't recognize is, anytime there is any sort of argument that, well, should women be in combat or should they not be? Or should transgenders have their sex change operations paid for by tax dollars if they join the military, or shouldn't they? It isn't an issue for many people, including me, about the transgender or about the what. It's about, does that make our military better? And by better, and this is the second and perhaps most important recognition, in the context of a more effective and efficient fighting machine. So this is where we get into some particular gray area, because people on the left will say, oh no, that diversity makes things better. It makes our military better. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of better. If your definition of better is this melting pot of left-wing ideology in which everyone just, something other than being the most effective fighting machine in the world, that's not the sort of better that people like Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are looking for. And so when you see the disinformation campaigns, and you're going to be talking with people, I can't believe Trump is banning transgenders from the military. He's not. He's just saying, if you are transgender, you're going to be treated like absolutely everyone else in the military. And that is, you're going to be treated as someone whose job it is to be trained to be the best and most effective fighting machine in the entire world. That is the only priority. If you want cosmetic surgeries, if you want all this other stuff that is going to result in you being laid up and not part of that mission, then you're not going to be part of that mission of being in the U.S. military. It's as simple as that. It's not banning anyone. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Have a number of you texting in regarding PETA encouraging the changing of the tradition for Groundhog Day, Puxatawny Phil, seeing his shadow, more winter, and so forth, where PETA wants a weather reveal cake instead, in which they say if it's blue, then 6 more weeks of winter, and if it's pink, then spring is around the corner, which apparently they were too lazy to come up with their own colors, and they just went with the gender reveal colors. Hank in Florida texted in, maybe they have a vegan jump out of a cake. If the vegan is nude, spring is sprung. If clothed, more winter. Now, that would actually make sense, because clothes, winter, nude, ready for spring. Although, I mean, let's be honest about people on the left and vegans. Arguably, that may not, a nude vegan, be a sight that anyone needs to see. Trump will issue an executive order. There will only be 2 weathers, or 2 seasons, I suppose. Groundhog Day. This from Kim in Nixa. Groundhog Day has been celebrated in Puxatawny, PA since 1887. The town keeps a tradition because it draws so many to the area, and they are able to get a financial boost for all the businesses. Now, I was born on Groundhog Day, and so many of us many of us will enjoy that little extra bit of celebration. Many go there to celebrate their birthday. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Well, and just like anything with PETA, they're completely and totally ineffective anyhow. So this is not a serious recommendation. It's more of an opportunity just to laugh at what a joke that organization is and how meaningless they are when it comes to actually treating animals in a legitimately ethical way. I think there's like a drinking component too, if I remember right. I talked with someone once who went to, or used to go annually to Puxatawny, Pennsylvania for that event. And it seems as if there was some sort of traditional component to it in addition to the groundhog that I think involved beer, but I forget. I'll have to look it up. I'm sure many of you probably know about it. I've had a very hard week. Trans politician calls Trump's order on biological sex public terrorism campaign. This is, another instance in which the left apparently hasn't recognized that slightly overstating things does not work in their favor. A transgender politician claimed yesterday that President Trump initiated a public terrorism campaign with an executive order on biological sex. Trump signed an executive order declaring the government's recognition of the biological reality of sex and defining terms like male, female, men, women, boy, girl, within hours of taking the oath of office January 2nd. Democratic State Rep Lee Finke of Minnesota, a male who claims to be a female, told CNN's newsroom host Paula Brown that Trump's order resulted in a very hard week. Quote, so since Donald Trump re-entered office, has your experience changed, especially in the wake of some of these executive orders you alluded to last week? Brown asked Fink. He rolled back protections for transgender people, such as segregating federal prisons by sex assigned at birth and only recognizing two sexes that they're not changeable. How has that impacted you? And so the trans politician said, quote, it has impacted me personally, as I think it has all trans people in the community, because these are not executive orders that change the law of the United States. They're intended to create a public terrorism campaign against our community. And of course, I felt that as a public-facing advocate for trans rights in Minnesota and across the country. Now, do you know what's left out of the conversation here? Is any example of how it is that this person's life has changed. What has happened? What has made it such a difficult week? What has occurred the week after the executive order was signed, saying that for purposes of government, there's a recognition that there's two genders here? I would suggest, other than self-hysteria and getting in an echo chamber of people who all claim that their lives are turned upside down, that in terms of any sort of real impact, there's not been a single bit of difference. We're supposed to believe that this sort of executive order is going to result, and in this case, already resulting in these horrific results, yet we're not told what any of those results are. It's the world of make-believe. Now, I will say, an area in which it is going to make a tremendous difference for the best for women is disallowing in federal prisons men from being transferred into a woman's prison because he claims that he's a woman. This is something that had been happening under the Biden administration, and numerous women have been beaten and raped by sex offenders who are men, but because they up and decide, I'm a woman, get the pleasure of being put at, like fish in a barrel, in which they get transferred to a women's prison, and the women are just told you have to deal with it. In fact, listen to this statement from this trans elected official. Trump rolled back protection for transgender people, such as segregating federal prisons by sex assigned at birth. Now, this is how twisted the left is. They believe that it is dangerous and lacking of protection to not allow sex offenders to be transferred who are men into a women's prison. And this is happening, by the way. This isn't, there are a number of different lawsuits out there, women who are being subject to this. It is, to me, incomprehensible that this is not only happening, but that even the left is supportive of it. Listen, I know if you're a person, and for the purposes of this conversation, a woman, and you go to jail, you lose certain rights, but I don't think you should be forced to be in a jail cell with a rapist and be subject to rape over and over and over again because that person identifies as a female. And the fact that the left supports that. There's a story from 2022. about Michelle Lael Norsworthy, biological male, who back in it was like 2014, 2015, sued in order to force taxpayers to pay for him to get a sex change operation to be a woman. Noseworthy was serving a sentence for murdering a man in 1987. So this is a transgender murderer who is outspoken about how he is sickened that people on the left are utilizing his case as justification to allow rapists to be transferred to women's prisons because they identify as women. Noseworthy told Redux, which is a self-described magazine outlet, in an interview, "I didn't mean for this to happen. My case in 2015 opened up a doorway, and I'm waiting for the states to apologize to women. I didn't mean for this to happen. Women are the most subdued people on the planet all over." And so here you have the person that is labeled as a trailblazer opening the door for men to be transferred to women's prisons, horrified at this, angry that she is the reason that women in prison are being subjected to rape. You can find numerous stories, and these don't get national headlines, of course, because it might make the left look bad and work against their cause. This from last year, May 13th, female inmate raped by trans inmate in California prison. A woman at the Central California Facility for Women says that she witnessed the immediate aftermath of a jailhouse rape by a transgender inmate. Mimi Lee provided sworn declaration to lawyers that the Women's Liberation Front, the Women's Liberation Front, which will be included in the organization's case against California. Lee reportedly said she was one of many inmates who saw events involving what was described as a sexual assault committed by a man who identifies as a woman and was therefore locked up in a women's prison. May 19th, a female inmate was taken to a medical administrative building after other female inmates reported to staff she had been raped by a man so brutally, who identified as a woman, that she was barely conscious. Less than an hour later, the female victim was taken away on a stretcher under a Code 3 alert. Lee and other inmates identified the assailant as Jonathan Robertson, a biological male transgender individual going by the name of Saya Skylet. Multiple inmates all noted that Roberts was shouting, "F all you B words, I'll rape you, I'll rape your mama, I'll F all you B up, there's nothing that you B can do." He also spit at fellow inmates. And unfortunately, at least in some of these states and in the federal prison system in which men are allowed to be housed with women, he's right, there is nothing they can do. And this is not an isolated incident. This is happening with great frequency. You cannot claim that you care about human rights. You cannot claim you care about civil rights. You certainly cannot claim that you support women if you are against a policy that says men who rape women are not allowed to be in a prison cell or in a prison with women just because they identify as a woman. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Blue School District doubles down on inclusive facilities after a registered sex offender exposes himself to young girls in those bathrooms. It's priorities. Arlington Public Schools superintendent released a statement recently affirming the district's commitment to inclusive facilities, even including sex offenders, after a registered sex offender was caught repeatedly exposing himself to young girls in a locker room on school property. Well, how bigoted those young girls are. I mean, don't they understand that sex offenders are people too? They may cause these sex offenders to commit suicide if they keep complaining about sex offenders utilizing and taking advantage of these policies in order to carry out their deviant acts. These whiny little girls need to understand their place in America, at least when you're in a blue district, in 2025. Not only are men above you on the hierarchy, but male sex offenders are as well. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. I keep seeing all these news stories about Holocaust Remembrance Day and
Yep.
all these recognitions, and I'm thinking, how can these people worry about something like that when January 6th occurred?
That's
I mean,
right.
because we've been told January 6th is by
Yeah.
far a greater human
That was
travesty
the
than,
worst of the worst.
yeah, the worse than the Holocaust, some Democrats claim. So,
9/11 and Pearl Harbor.
yes, a whole slew of things that January 6th was worse than. A couple of your text messages regarding Dr. Phil going along on some of these deportations. From David, Dr. Phil is concerned with the staggering number of children being sex trafficked, and he is trying to bring awareness to that. And I know you and I know this, but with the media doing everything they can to cover up all of the horrific results of the open border policies of the Democrats and all of these kids that have been funneled into this country into sex slavery, there's a tremendous amount of Americans have no idea this is going on because those children cannot be used against Republicans. So they cover it up so you don't know about it, which is unfortunate because if people don't know about it, then it diminishes the likelihood that we'll ever get to save those kids or stop future kids from being sold into sex slavery in the United States of America in 2025. So Dr. Phil getting out there and doing what he can in order to spread awareness for an issue like that, I think is important. A teacher group I follow on Facebook has released an infographic about how to protect your students when ICE comes to your school to grab them. Seriously. Even if this was a real thing, Trump is savvy enough to understand optics and would not be grabbing children from public schools. I'm pretty sure this is related to the Secret Service coming to Chicago school to talk with a student who made a threat against the president, which they do and have historically done when school computers are used to make threats. Yeah, this was a disinformation campaign that was spread by the Chicago Tribune, by the governor of Illinois and others, that Trump had sent ICE to raid an elementary school when, in fact, it was Secret Service, as this person noted, that was investigating a threat against the President of the United States. This is who these people are. When they talk about and they say that Trump is spreading fear and divisions, and they're the ones who are running around convincing or attempting to convince people that elementary schools are being raided by ICE and that children are being rounded up. They know that that's not true. And why is it that they would have to make something like that up if it's happening anyhow? Chicago really is becoming the land of making things up about Trump. I mean, you got Jussie Smollett falsely accusing that, Trump supporters, imaginary Trump supporters, of attacking him for being black. You've got the governor of New York, Illinois, and the Chicago Tribune falsely claiming that Trump has sent ICE agents in to round up kindergartners that are in this country illegally. Illinois really is quite the gem of a state. Oh, if Lincoln would only have known. That isn't to say that there aren't going to be instances in which there may be immigration that is coming in to get someone in a school, but that would be someone that is a maintenance worker or a substitute teacher or some other position that is a convicted rapist in this country illegally. Now, I know in the minds of the left, the compassionate thing to do is to allow a convicted child rapist who's in the country illegally to not be got, at school, that we should just leave them in school, make that their sanctuary place. But that's not the perspective of the current administration. Yeah, it's all about priorities. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you have a home buying need or a home selling need, you have Emily Johnson for all of those needs. Maybe you know somebody that's moving from out of town, and that can be a very overwhelming thing. I remember when I moved back to the area, I was fortunate enough, and I was just looking to rent, at least in the temporary, to have my parents, of course, and family in the area. So before I moved back, I had them go and, find a number of different places they thought I would like. They know my, what I like and I don't like. And so I was able to have that as a resource, but you may not have that, or the people that moving to the area may not have it. Well, they do have it with Emily Johnson House Theory Realty. So even if it isn't for you, but it's somebody that is fleeing a liberal run state like New Jersey or California, that can be one way that you can help them as political refugees resettle here in Missouri, is to help them find that perfect home with Emily Johnson House Theory Realty. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 58. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 34. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 57. And on Thursday, rain throughout the day with a high near 54.
If it is legit to send around information on how to evade the laws in our country, as teachers are apparently doing with schools. Not that schools are being raided, but anyhow, they're part of this is to make people believe it's happening. So what happens is you have left-wing activists that will have these Facebook pages helping teachers know how it is to protect their kids from being scooped up. And so that becomes a news story, and that creates this narrative that is happening, even though it isn't happening. But the left isn't about the truth. It's about scaring people. And so, of course, that's what they're trying to do. But if we are going to live in a society where it's like, okay, teachers can be used as tools in order to help people break the rules, how can you then punish any student for cheating on a test? Why then can I not, if I have access to a test and all the answers, send that out to all of the students who are going to be taking the test? And then when people say you can't do that, that's cheating, say, hey, listen, they just want a better grade. That's all. They just want a better grade. And why shouldn't they, why shouldn't they get a little bit of help? I mean, just because other people went through the actual process of learning and studying and legitimately getting the grade, that doesn't mean that everyone wants to take that pathway. So why can't we help them navigate the shortcuts in order to get around the rules? And public school systems are becoming meaningless anyhow, so at this point, I suppose, what difference does it make? Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Tell the schools those kids being taken are unvaccinated and tested positive for bird flu. This does bring up actually a good contradiction. Now, the left is out there falsely claiming that the Trump administration is raiding elementary schools to take kids. A lot of this disinformation came out of Chicago. They used a scenario in which Secret Service was doing an investigation because of a threat coming from the school to the president, and falsely claimed that it was a massive raid by ICE. They knew what they were doing. They knew that they were lying, and they know that, of course, they'll probably have to do a quiet backtracking. But the point is, there'll be more of this. You create these stories for the media to cover so that they can make people believe things are going on that aren't going on. We've been through this before. I mean, this is a repeat of the first Trump administration. You think about how particularly the blue district-run schools acted about the unvaccinated, many arguing that they should be locked up. That if your kid wasn't vaccinated, your kid was essentially a vial of anthrax that was at any moment set to kill off countless numbers of innocent people. But they will welcome in, without any sort of question, kids who have been brought here illegally that have absolutely no vaccine status on anything. This is one of the reasons that in some of the big cities there have been outbreaks, particularly in sheltered areas in elementary school, of diseases that we haven't seen for decades in this country. And it's because of that very thing, the welcoming of children of illegal families that have come into this country. And it's like anything else. I mean, you see it in everything that the left does. Vaccination status is not about health. It's not about safety for them. It's about control. If it were about health and safety, they would be the front line of defense against people bringing kids into the school system that do not have vaccinations for things like the mumps and the measles. But instead, they welcome and encourage that because it's not about vaccines. It's not about health. There is no greater promoter of the fact that the left is full of lies than the left itself by its own behavior. They demonstrate it with virtually every issue that's out there. Now, here's an interesting little story. You may recall there was this situation, maybe a month ago, several weeks ago, maybe further back than that, in which you had the president of South Korea battling with their National Assembly, and the military was called in, and there was this whole to-do. And essentially what was going on is the president of South Korea tried to have the military essentially take over the government on his behalf. And then whenever the National Assembly is like, no, you can't do that. In fact, we're going to vote to condemn this. He used the military to start rounding them up to block them from getting in. I mean, it was a real attempt, demonstrated by action, to completely take over the government utilizing the military. Well, he has now become the first sitting Korean president to face a criminal indictment. And do you know what the criminal indictment is? It's insurrection. See, this is what an insurrection looks like. And by the way, just as in South Korea, insurrection, that is an actual crime here in the United States. One that, and I know this is difficult for a lot of you anti-Trump people to swallow, that no one has ever been charged with. Do you know why? Because no one came close to fitting the description of the actual crime of insurrection. I think we can all agree that if they came even close to it, the Biden administration would have charged them, given that they've said that it's worse than 9/11 and the Holocaust, and they have rounded up, without, for many instances, the the right to have a trial people and thrown them in jail, but not a single one charged with insurrection. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol was indicted on charges of insurrection Sunday, the first sitting South Korean president to face a criminal indictment. Insurrection, one of the few crimes that the executive immunity does not protect in South Korea, is punishable by life in prison and or the death penalty. The charges stem from Yoon attempting and rapidly failing to impose complete military rule over the entire country on December 3rd. Yoon prompted an ongoing political firestorm in the country by abruptly declaring martial law in early December, claiming it was necessary because the opposition-led National Assembly was blocking his legislative agenda. The indictment, according to South Korean news agency Yonhap, accused Yoon of trying to use the military to block members of the National Assembly from voting against the martial law decree and planning to arrest political rivals, among other alleged actions. Yoon, a hardline anti-communist, claimed North Korea was attempting to infiltrate and neutralize Seoul, creating a national security emergency that required the imposition of military rule. The martial law status lasted only about 6 hours as National Assembly lawmakers stormed the legislative floor to vote against the decree. Martial law in the country makes all political activity illegal, and the military surrounding the National Assembly to block lawmakers from convening to vote against the decree, but the assemblymen scaled fences, elbowed through the columns of heavily armed soldiers to make it to the floor and vote. Yoon relented eventually and announced an end to the martial law decree shortly thereafter. Now, I don't know what the definition in Korea or South Korea of insurrection is, but apparently it is believed that there is at least evidence that the president of South Korea was responsible for an insurrection based off their law. I would note, again, this is what happens when in a country, in this case, rule of law, they're like, here's a president that was responsible for insurrection. Here are our laws. This person is being arrested, and we are going to put them on trial for it. Something that the Biden administration never did to Donald Trump. The reason being is because it was not an insurrection, and even they knew it. In fact, Trump actually did request the National Guard. However, it wasn't to stop elected officials from doing their duty. It was to protect them so that they could. But Nancy Pelosi turned them down. The mayor of D.C. turned them down. General Milley acknowledged during the investigation by the Inspector General's office that he just flat out ignored the orders from Trump. You see the difference here? Slight difference. There was no insurrection. And this is something that the left cannot. It's why the argument that Trump is not the legitimate president or that he shouldn't have been allowed to run for president because of insurrection, you kind of have to be, at the very least, charged with something. See, that's how it works in a country of rule and law. You're not a convicted murderer unless you've actually been charged with murder and found guilty of murder by a jury of your peers. And you're not an insurrectionist unless you've been charged with insurrection and found guilty of insurrection by a jury of your peers. Neither of those things happen. You don't get to, in this country, just declare political opposition as a convicted something unless they actually are. And you don't get to take away the right of the American people to vote for that person simply because you declare that they're a convicted something, in this case insurrectionist, when they aren't. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. I'm curious how the military handles pregnancies. I'm trying to think of any other medical situation that requires long-term care. I agree with your cosmetic procedure analogy that people can't just get any cosmetic thing covered in the military. I would actually say it actually wasn't even an analogy. It's just when it comes to sex change operations, that is cosmetic surgery. So I don't want to nitpick here, but to get to the point, I think we sometimes forget that when we're talking about sex change operations, we are talking about cosmetic surgery. It is physically altering one's body in order to look a particular way that was not part of the natural body itself. I'm brainstorming what else would hurt the ability to serve in the military. It's interesting. I actually went, based off of that question, to military.com, medical conditions that keep you from joining the military. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. A number of things I've never even heard of before. And the reason for the listings, and these change over time, is not because people with those particular medical conditions are seen as lesser, but it's just all about one thing, as it should be. Is there anything that prevents this individual from assisting and benefiting the military in advancing the ultimate cause of being the absolute best, most dangerous and deadly fighting force in the world? And if the answer is yes, then they don't belong there. Now, there can be a sliding scale. You know, if, for example, it's determined that people who have hearing below a certain level can be detrimental to the military, but it turns out that 80% of your fighting force have hearing below that, well, the 80% loss of military personnel is obviously much worse than having a segment of your military serving population have not the best hearing in the world. And so based off of that, you may alter that landscape. But it should all come down to that. When the whole argument first came up, and this was something Obama started on his way out of office, by the way. And he did it just to make Trump's life miserable. Understand that. Obama didn't believe in transgenders openly serving in the military because if he did or believed that it was good for the military, he would have done it early on. He waited until he was on his way out. That was deliberate. And then when Trump reversed it, it allowed the media to make it seem like Trump was all of a sudden turning the clock back when much of the change from Obama had never even been implemented regarding transgenders in the military because he did it on his way out. But we kept hearing it was all about all of these transgenders that just want to serve. They want to serve. They want to get back to their country. Well, I'm sorry, but the military is not about them. It's not about any one individual other than the context of we live in a country that needs a military to protect us. But the military doesn't exist to fulfill an individual person's need, whether they're gay, straight, white, black, woman, man, transgender, whatever. That's not why the military exists. And so that should ultimately be the measurement. Does the inclusion of this individual or people with this particular status help or hurt the military? And if the answer is it hurts it, definitely not. If the answer is it helps it, and again, when we say help, we have to define what that means, because the left has a much different definition of what is helpful to the military than those who want the military to be the most brutal fighting force in the world. If it was determined somehow that people under 4 foot or people over 4 foot somehow diminished the lethality of our military, then I would argue people over 4 foot should not be allowed in the military. If it is somehow determined that people with hazel eyes in combat is detrimental to the effectiveness and lethality of our military, then we should not have people with hazel eyes in combat positions. Oh, but people with hazel eyes, they love this. It's not about them. That's the lens through which we need to, and I know many of you do, many of you understand this, but we've just gotten so off kilter culturally in this country. Even, I think, well-meaning people who don't have an obsession with LGBTQ stuff and love the military can think, well, but, these are people who love their country and they, this is what they want to do to contribute. That's not what the military is for. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 58. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 34. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 57. And on Thursday, we'll see rain throughout the day with a high near 54.
Well, here's a story with just about everything, and the headline really demonstrates such. Man arrested for alleged Trump threat is reportedly a drag queen named Big Mama who is friends with Casey Anthony.
Wow.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, there's a lot happening.
Yeah. Outkick noting it's official. We're a week into Trump's second term as president. The meltdown's taking place at an unbelievable pace. You got folks who cut their own bangs issuing warnings to Make America Great Again crowd about eating at Mexican restaurants, even the beloved Taco Bell. Then we have Selena Gomez posting and deleting a self-serving video of her crying about her people being attacked. Evidently, her people are illegal immigrants here breaking the laws, such as murder and rape. In the clip, the multimillionaire, she's actually estimated $1.3 billion, said she wished she could do something, but she just didn't know what to do. Here's an idea. How about you open up your doors to your mansion? There are folks like Shannon DeParo Atkins of West Palm Beach, Florida, who are allegedly calling for the assassination of Trump on social media. He was charged with felony intimidation, drug possession, and smuggling contraband in a county detention center. But oath keepers are dangerous. According to the New York Post, he's not just any Florida man making alleged threats on social media. The 46-year-old is a well-known drag queen who's friends with Casey Anthony. Yes, that Casey Anthony. Atkins, who's known by his drag name Big Mama, regularly hangs out with his infamous friend. The Post has a picture of the two hanging out before. According to the outlet, they scrubbed their social media accounts. Quote, yes, they're friends. She always said that he is really funny, and she liked to hang around him because he made her laugh so much. A friend of Anthony's who reportedly confirmed the friendship said she doesn't like Trump either. I'm sure that really kills Trump, that Casey Anthony's not a big fan of his. Anthony doesn't like Trump either, but I don't think their friendship is based on that. I think they just have similar senses of humor. The drag queen, who owns a bakery, allegedly wrote on Facebook the day before Trump's inauguration, January 19th, America needs one good bullet to be saved. But again, it's Christian conservatives that are the danger in our society. That was one of several alleged social media posts by Big Mama on different platforms referencing the assassination of the president. And so I love the description of some of these individuals as people who cut their own bangs. Costco, I'm not a member of Costco. Are you a member of
No.
Costco? I checked Costco out once because I was curious about it. We go to Sam's Club. I do have a membership there, largely because it's closer. Uh, I live in Republic, and so Costco being on the other side of Springfield, as opposed to Sam's Club. But I had gone just to check Costco out once, and there were some things about it I thought, oh, well, they have this, and Sam's doesn't, and Sam's has this, and for me, it was kind of a mixed bag. I'd ask a family member who has memberships to both which it is that they like better, and I remember them describing, it was like some of their products were a little higher end at Costco, but when it came to certain things, Sam's had a better selection, and so it seemed like a bit of a mixed bag to me, and I've just settled on Sam's because that, again, is it's just closer. Although when I went to tour Costco that day, they mentioned that there were plans to build a Costco out around Menards in that area and the new Target, somewhere around there. And I thought, oh, well, then that will be closer. But they just are doubling down on this woke stuff to the point that Al Sharpton is essentially making himself a spokesperson for Costco. Now, talk about, number one, what company wants one of the most unapologetically anti-Semites to be this unofficial spokesperson for them? That's beyond me. If I were Costco, I'd be like, you know what? Listen, hey, maybe we don't want you to be making so much noise celebrating Costco as an anti-Semite. Just maybe. We get what you're doing. We appreciate it. Hey, in fact, we'll give you a free membership, but I don't really know that we want to be associated with you. The Daily Mail noting that Costco shoppers warn that Al Sharpton's involvement in a buy-in celebrating their DEI policies could be a kiss of death for the retail giant. The show of support from Al Sharpton's organization came after Costco and its shareholder defied Trump and conservative activists by voting to stick to their divisive diversity, equity, and inclusion policies last week. The anti-Semitic civil rights activist led 100 members of his National Action Network through the Harlem Costco to spend their money in a show of gratitude for the decision. Quote, leading a buy-in with 100 plus at National Action members at the Costco location in Harlem, New York City to show support for the company's strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, Reverend Sharpton said. Well, except for Jews. But, I mean, DEI only applies to actual humans, and given that Jews are subhuman to people like Al Sharpton, it just goes without saying that they don't really count. Sharpton revealed in a speech outside the store that he bought $125 gift vouchers for each buy-in participant to spend inside. So the 100 people that he managed to rally, which, I don't know, to me, demonstrates a real erosion of his influence. Even at that, he had to give them money in order to come and spend. They weren't even spending their own money. Quote, we're going shopping at Costco because they've stood with us. People that stand with us will stand with them. Anti-Semites unite at Costco. The move has been sharply criticized online due to Sharpton's divisive reputation, critics calling his involvement as the kiss of death for Costco. Costco has been warned that Sharpton's involvement as a buy-in celebrating DEI could be the kiss of death. One saying, as a long customer, when Sharpton is using you as a liberal party tool, I'm done with you. Sharpton is a kiss of death, and so forth. I mean, ultimately, is this the sort of thing that is going to cause enough people to cancel their memberships to Costco just because their new unofficial spokesperson is one of the biggest anti-Semites in the country? I don't think. You'll probably have some people, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, people have certain habits. They have buying habits. They like places they like, the places they go, part of their everyday patterns. And, a little anti-Semitism here or there isn't enough necessarily. Now, if you raise your membership price $10 or $15 a year, that might do it for some people. But a little Sharpton anti-Semitism, hey, It comes free with the membership, I guess. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com, all of those home loan needs. And this past Friday at Scramblers, we talked with Anthony Carricker, and seemed like there was a period of time, there were a lot of these commercials with actors from the 60s and 70s talking about reverse mortgage. Didn't Tom Selleck do one even? You probably don't even remember.
No.
For the reverse mortgage. I really feel like Tom Selleck was doing a reverse mortgage ad for a while. Anyhow, there for a period of time was really a new concept. It sounded kind of scary and intimidating, like you're getting scammed out of your house.
He did, by the way.
Okay, well, there we go. See the absolutely useful information that finds these little pockets in my brain and sits in there like Tom Selleck.
And I cater to him.
Yeah, and you yes, you do. You cater and you reward me for having such useless knowledge by validating them. So I thank you for that. And then it just seemed as if the advertisements for those weren't nearly as heavy. And I think for a lot of people, well, maybe they went away. Maybe that's not a thing anymore, but it is. And for a lot of people, it's perfectly legit. Point being is that is something that if you are a retirement age and you don't even have to have your home fully paid off, but it might be an option for you. And that is something that, again, they can work with you with, talk with you with. And you may find out, no, that's not the thing I want to do. But at least then you know. And, of course, for all of your standard purchasing or standard home loans and refinancing, you've got the Carrickers and their team right here in Springfield. And it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Trump yesterday trolled the left by throwing out this whole, hey, I wonder if I can serve a third term. I don't know if I can or not. And he does this. It's an inside joke that's not really inside because it's exposed, but it still functions like an inside joke to his supporters to watch the left go crazy. You know what it is in my mind? I always envision like a hen house in the middle of the night. And you can kind of just hear every once in a while, but mostly it's quiet. Maybe you hear some feathers ruffling, and then you get like a little black cat firework and light it, and you toss it in there, and then it pops, and then everyone just goes nuts. That's what Trump does with the left. He throws out, just quietly lights a blackjack firework and throws it in there and pop, and then everybody just goes crazy and nuts. And it's for his amusement, and it is a gift to normal people who understand what's going on. Here's another story that can fall into that category. Support grows for idea of adding Trump to Mount Rushmore. Now, I'm not a believer in doing any of that stuff while somebody is president. Why am I not a believer in that? I don't even know. I just, for whatever reason, I don't know. I guess because it's in the moment. And the person is still president, and so you've got a less objective perspective of things. You're emotionally driven, and I don't know that I'm right in feeling that way, but that's just always been the way that I've felt about naming buildings or schools. I think after you're no longer in office, because they're already Dulles Airport, there's talk about changing that over to Trump Airport. some of those, I think it's okay when you're no longer in office, but then certain things like being on Mount Rushmore, I do think you have to be dead for some of those things. That's just my opinion. But the real fun of this is how crazy the left will go at the mere suggestion. Amy Furr writing in Breitbart, the idea of carving President Trump's likeness into South Dakota's Mount Rushmore is apparently picking up steam. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, like her, she's a Republican from Florida, told the New York Post that she's introducing legislation to have the job done. Former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski said the first to propose the move during a recent interview or he was rather the first to propose it during an interview on the Benny Johnson show. In response, Luna said she would soon file legislation on the matter. Social media users quick to respond. One person writing, the Democrats would whine for years and years. Another saying, so badass. Do it. Liberals will be so done. What a time to be alive. This isn't noble. But if you note, much of the idea, the joy in the idea of this for people is watching the left melt down. Just the irrational reaction to it. Why should they actually even be opposed to it? The left has even declared somehow Abraham Lincoln a racist. So it's not exactly as if you have these people on Mount Rushmore that the left have great admiration for. These are a bunch of, privileged, racist individuals. You would think that they would argue, yeah, Trump does belong there. He's just like the rest of those heathens up there, these racist, patriarchal elites, and in their minds. And so, why would they be opposed to that?
Well, the good news is I was out there, and I know that there is room right next to Lincoln.
Yeah.
To add him.
Yeah. You got Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, Lincoln. Throwing him up there. They could use his mug shot. Don't you? That would be the perfect. Yeah, use that mug shot. The National Park Service webpage regarding the monument notes that majestic figures of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, surrounded by the beauty of the Black Hills of South Dakota, tell the story of the birth, growth, development, and preservation of this country. Now, in all seriousness, if we continue on the path that Trump is, people may hate him, but he is completely historic. And this golden era, if he gets his way, it will be this transformational golden era, if you will, for the United States. History, of course, will tell, and sadly, history is not always accurate, but frankly, the idea, once some time has passed, depending on how transformative Trump is in terms of the country and altering the direction of this declining nation into a golden era, I don't think that it is off base to argue that somebody like that should be on Mount Rushmore. In 2022, Trump denied a report that he seriously proposed his likeness to be added to Mount Rushmore. However, the president added that he, quote, never suggested it, although, based on all of the many things accomplished during my first 3.5 years, perhaps more than any other president, sounds like a good idea to me, which, of course, is the absolute typical Trump response to something. One of my favorite things that Trump does is whenever he will be talking about how, some people have said I should be on Mount Rushmore, or I wouldn't say that, but a lot of people are out there saying it. I love when he says stuff like that. It cracks me up to no end. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Oh, you know what he should do? Oh, just thought of it before we go take this quick break here. He should just sell little paperweight Mount Rushmores with his face on it.
That's a great idea.
There you go. See, I got the same mind Trump. Trump has the, wherewithal to do it and the motivation to do it. I just like to say the ideas out loud. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. If you're having roofing issues, don't wait until spring. Now is the time to schedule that free roof inspection with the Pyramid Roofing Company. There's no strings attached with that free roof inspection, meaning that you don't have to go through a 2-hour presentation on why you should hire Pyramid. They also don't use scare tactics, and they don't try to upsell you either. They just tell you how it is. And now is a good time to have them out because contractors are slowing down in the cooler weather months, and you can see a quicker turnaround time as well. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out at your home, schedule an appointment with Josh today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I have a couple of stories that I printed off just days ago, and I do this sometimes with stories. I'll do it tomorrow, but I really want to talk about tomorrow too. Missouri lawmaker files bill to restrict student cell phone use during learning time. Why just even during learning? I mean, that's better than nothing, but it's just, to me, there is nothing that is as simple, though people will complain about it, that can make such a big difference in student learning as banning cell phones in the schools or in the classroom. The fact that this is even something that is up for debate demonstrates we're not serious in this country about education. I played a story out of, I think it was Miami-Dade County in Florida, in which the school district had implemented the policy there, and people, pitched a fit about it, but it's been in long enough for them to see results. And I think even those who were proponents of it were shocked with how much productivity increased, grades increased. There were much less fights in school. There were much less conflicts in school because you didn't have the draw of filming fights and posting it on social media because you didn't have your phones on you. All of these problems, and what they found is that students, particularly after a while, began engaging in discussions and conversations on a level that they had not before. I didn't watch the full video, but it was somewhere over in England where they were interviewing kids that had their cell phones taken away from them for a period of time in schools. And initially they were taught, how was it in the beginning? Oh, it was really hard and I felt anxious, but they would talk with them over time. And in the end, these kids were acknowledging that they felt less anxious. They felt less stressed out. They felt like they were more focused without having their phones on them all the time. The fact that this is not dealt with as an absolute no-brainer situation tells me that we are really not serious, ultimately, in this country about making meaningful change to improve the education of kids, because this is one of the easiest things you can do. And still, some schools are doing it. Also, there's a bill that would require cursive handwriting in Missouri schools, and that's something I want to talk about as well, because I think that there's a greater degree of significance to that than many people understand. All right, tomorrow morning we will see you as we broadcast live St. George's Donuts, Battlefield and National. Come by, get a donut donation for Heroes Breakfast. I'm Nick Reed.